Hey everyone, it's me, Throbbie with Large Lads, and today I'm doing a tier list for you. And this tier list is going to be good for anyone who is maybe in world building, building their own world, enjoys fantasy video games, movies, TV shows, anything like that. So without further ado, let's get racist. What I mean by that is we're going to be ranking fantasy races, doing a little tier list here. And this list is a little bit biased. I'm a huge Elder Scrolls fan, so I actually have all of the Elder Scrolls races on here, and I also have a lot of races from various other mediums, and whether it's a TV show, a movie, something like that. So let's get started, and we're going to start with Argonians. So if you're not familiar, Argonians are a lizard folk in Skyrim, or in all of the Elder Scrolls. They're native to Black Marsh, is their home province, and throughout the different games, they have different little unique features. Like in Skyrim, they can breathe underwater and they're impervious to poison. And I think they are pretty cool, and they have a really cool relationship with the Hists, which are like these sentient trees. But as you'll see later, I think there's two kinds of Elder Scrolls players, and I'm the kind of Elder Scrolls player that thinks Argonians are low tier, unfortunately. I'm going to put them C tier. I would probably put them D tier, but I think that I actually think that they're pretty lame in general, actually, in my opinion. But I think that they have a pretty cool relationship with like the Hists. It's a pretty unique thing. Is a pretty unique thing. Sorry, I had to push my dog. Is a pretty unique thing they have with the Hiss. So I think that's the only reason they're in C tier and not D tier. Um, but I'm pretty happy with that. And you'll see. I'll tell you what I mean later. But I think there's two kinds of Elder Scrolls players, or maybe three, but we'll see. And then so next we have the Bosmer or the Wood Elf from the Elder Scrolls. So they call Valenwood their home. Um, and this probably goes with a Wood Elf in any fantasy story or book or movie or game, whatever it might be. Um, they're just the really stereotypical Wood Elf, and they are in the Elder Scrolls as well. They do have a cool part of their lore where they have these contracts where they kind of have a contract or a rule where they can't cut down trees or eat plants. So they're all carnivores, which makes them a little bit different. Um, and I think they're also like cannibals part time. I think they're right above the Argonian. They might even be below the Argonian. It's just really uninspired. A Wood Elf is cool, but they are. It's kind of like a bit of a filler. I think it's kind of like a filler race, as you just have a Wood Elf. And if there's nothing special about them, or maybe there is, the problem is it's just so cliche. So I'm going to put them C tier. I don't think if you're world building, I think it actually makes sense to have a Wood Elf if you are world building, or an Argonian for that matter. You want to have. It's okay to have cliche races. I mean, humans, if you have a fantasy story, are cliche. So, because there's humans in just about every fantasy story. So, I think it's important maybe to have the cliche races in world building. But if you're telling me like this is a tier list compared to other cool races, and they don't match up as far as coolness, lore wise, anything like that. So they're C tier. Next are the Bretons. Now, ugh. The thing about the Bretons is that they're hybrid. It's a hybrid race, but it doesn't feel like it at all. And they have I think the problem is the Elder Scrolls, they have really cool stories with like their provinces, but I think the issue with that is that some races, the province and the lore surrounding the province is better than the actual race itself. And I think that that's especially in this case. And they also don't seem to really follow the Elder Scrolls' rules for interbreeding between races, where I think in the Elder Scrolls you're supposed to take the race of your mother, and I don't see how. I mean, this is like I guess way too deep, but I don't know how you can have a half race when maybe I just don't know. Maybe there's more lore behind it. I don't know how you can have a half race if you just take the race of your mother. I do think that they're the weakest race, though. Probably they're the weakest race in the Elder Scrolls, flat out. If you're a Breton enjoyer, just play an elf instead. Sorry. Maybe not actually. Play whatever you want. But in terms of this, they're a human race that is an elf race, but what they get, what they end up with is they have no elf qualities, and then they're the weakest of the human races. So I think they're the obvious D tier choice for me. Next is the Char from Guild Wars, and I've never played the Guild Wars actually, but I did look into a little bit of their lore, and I think that they are cool. I think that it's a unique spin that a beast race are like engineers. Um, they're almost kind of, it seems like they almost take like a bit of like like what the typical dwarf like in a J.R.R. Tolkien story is. That they kind of have a bit of that vibe, but they're uh, lion folk or feline folk, whatever you call it, instead. I think that they're B tier. I think that they're pretty cool. Um, and again, I don't know the most about their lore. So if you're a huge Guild Wars 2 fan and you're like the Char are so cool, I threw them in this list so I could get some Guild Wars 2 because I covered a lot of other fantasy stuff and I didn't touch on the Guild Wars 2 enough. So I threw them in here just because I thought that they seemed cool, and I'm gonna give them B tier. If that's totally off and there actually should be S tier, let me know in the comments. So next we have the Dunmer, and they call Morrowind home. And if I've never played Morrowind, but I've seen Morrowind. I've watched some videos Morrowind. Obviously, I've played Skyrim and Oblivion and The Elder Scrolls Online. Um, and I think that just all of the relationships with how their race works, their relationships with the gods and how they worship some of the typically evil gods, and then also they kind of have like such a unique province where it's a ash volcano land, and they almost made it impossible to take that because it's so Dunmer, to me at least. If you show me your map and you have a big volcano and everybody's living in ash, and then you're like, yeah, and there's dark elves there, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's the Dunmer. So to me, like they're genre defining. I think they're the best dark elf of any game, and they're S tier. They might be one of the best races. They're S tier flat out. Next, and I'll tell you from this list, I stayed away from sci-fi because I'm not a huge sci-fi guy, but I saw the Ewoks, and I was like, they're kind of like a fantasy race, and they're just like little teddy bears that live in the forest. And I think it's really cool that they are cute, but they're like pretty savage. So I think they're pretty cool, actually. I'm gonna give them B tier. I think they're one of the more. I mean, I guess aside from like a Wookiee, they're definitely like the most well-known race in Star Wars, and they're kind of the most of the fantasy. They kind of hit the fantasy the most. This next one, I want to say it's the Draconid. If I hover over it, will it tell me? I might have to open up my little file here, double check and make sure. Okay, yep, next is the Draconid. Okay, so this is a WoW race. And the humanoid dragon servants, I guess. They're elite warriors. Actually, what I think I probably should have done here is got like the Dragonborn race from D&D, because I think Dragonborn race from like D&D or specifically Baldur's Gate, because that's what I've played, is much cooler than the Draconid. I think generally speaking, if you're on the same if you're the exact same as another trope, So like, say you have the cat folk, which I'm going to break this here in a second, but say if you have the cat folk, if there's another type of cat folk in a different fantasy genre and they're much cooler than yours, you obviously have to lower down the tier list. So the fact that the Dragonborns are so much cooler, I think makes these guys low C tier. And then this next one is a Furbolg from Warcraft. And it's a tribal bear. He's not very cool either, I'm going to be honest. I think the problem with beast races is they have to be really unique and have like a lot of flair. And, and I don't mean to be a beast race hater, but this guy, he's a servant. He's kind of like the Draconids are good warriors, but that's pretty. I mean, you're a beast folk, so of course you're like the general. It seems like most writers or developers or anything like that tend to lean towards, okay, this is a beast, so we're gonna hit it right on the nose on what that beast is known for. So if you're a dragon person, you're gonna be a good fighter. If you're a bear person, you're gonna be a good fighter. But that's why I think the Char are pretty cool, because maybe they are good fighters, but they kind of are like steampunky, which is like you wouldn't expect. So I like that. But we're gonna put him in C tier. And the only reason he's above the Draken is because I just think bears are cooler. So it's pretty arbitrary, honestly. And next are the Gilman from Pathfinder. They're fish folk, so they're amphibious humanoids. I think this is cool only because it seems like most times in fantasy, if you're going to hit this, you're going to do an Argonian, or you're going to do an elf that can do this, or an elf-like character. So like here the Navi, right? So they're like a sea elf, and I think it's pretty rare that you just see him make him a human with gills or whatever it might be. So I think it's B tier. I don't think it's like bad like C tier. There's a showdown going on behind me. Give me 1 second. Okay, and we're back. We stopped the fight. We broke it up. Next are the Altmer. And what the Altmer are is they are just super cliche high elves that have a cool evil flair with the Thalmor. And they are cooler than the Wood Elves and the Argonians, but not by the most. They do have some really cool lore. All of their stuff with like Ariel, and like I said, the Thalmor is very cool, and they do have a cool vibe. They're one of the cooler races as far as elves go, in the Elder Scrolls specifically. That's all really I can say about them. I mean, they're pretty basic. They're pretty basic for sure. Okay. Next, we have the Hobbits, and the Hobbits are easy A tier. They're borderline S tier. I think the Hobbits, obviously, the Shire is such a cool landscape for the architecture, the way that it's represented is it's really cool, and it's really unique, and there's not really anything else like it. And I think, like I said earlier, you run into now where doing that is a trope or it's cliche if you were to copy it like that, because it's so unique and it's so iconic. And then the hobbits themselves, how they're just little people, but I think it's really cool that in obviously the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit, they're kind of the hero of the story, kind of the unsuspecting hero. So I think hobbits are pretty awesome. I think that's a fair take. So next are the Hrothgar. So this is from Final Fantasy. Look, I've never played Final Fantasy. And from what I've seen, they're just like some basic warrior cat person. So to keep in fairness with what I've been doing, I think the lion folk are pretty not cool at all, actually. I think they're pretty low tier. I think they're borderline D tier. Honestly, if the Bretons weren't so bad, they would be in D tier. Actually, they might be in D tier. I'm going to put them in D tier for the time being. I think that they kind of belong down there. Yeah. Yeah, I think they belong down there. I think they're pretty terrible, actually. They're just, it's a lion, and then the race is it's a lion. So, next is the Imperials. And the Imperials are, in my opinion, not the coolest human race. But they're cool. Than Bretons. They have probably the most. Obviously, they have their own game Oblivion, so they have a much more lore than most of the races. And they kind of just directly inspire. They're kind of directly inspired from Roman history and mythology and stories. I think they're pretty cool. I think the Imperial City is really cool. The Imperials in Skyrim suck because Skyrim's for the Nords, and we all know that. But I think that they belong in the middle of B tier. I think that they're like your average human race. I think there's nothing really special about them. And then next, we're going to have the Kenku? Kenku. Next, we have the Kenku. And they're a cursed crow folk. They're thieves. They generally have pretty cool origin stories. So there's other bird folk in games. And we might even have one here on this list. That's another bird folk. Unless we don't, which we might not, because I put this guy on here to kind of sum it up, is I think bird folk generally don't really work. But I think the Kinku specifically does. I think they're pretty dope, actually. I actually think that they're at the top of B tier. I think they're pretty cool, actually. They're like rogues. Fuck, they might be higher. I think they're actually A tier. They're actually A tier. I think the Kenku are pretty cool. Personally, what I'm into, and you'll see here really shortly, as far as doing a beast race, I think it's going too broad is bad, right? So if you have a bird folk that are just all birds, that kind of sucks. The fact that they picked probably the coolest bird, a crow or a raven, they picked the coolest bird, in my opinion, to do this with, and it works the best. And yeah, I think it's pretty cool. And they have really cool backstories and lore. So it's definitely Kenku would be A tier, and I feel pretty good about that. Next we have the Lich. So specifically here, I have Lich from WoW. And I think Liches, and this kind of goes with Liches in any game because they're generally the same. It's an undead necromancer sorcerer. They're way cooler than normal undead, obviously. Maybe that goes without saying. I think that they're A tier, and I'm not sure if they're cooler than Kenku or not. I don't think that they. Man, if I were to roleplay one, which one would I rather be? If I was one, which one? Well, maybe not. Not that. That's probably not a good way to do it. All right, I'm going to say Kenku are cooler for now because I think the the Liches are just so broad. There's cool ones, there's bad ones, there's cliche ones. It's kind of cliche on its own. I'm going to say that they're A tier though, but they're not as cool as the Kenku. All right. Next up is my hottest and most biased take. And this is why I said there's two kinds of Elder Scrolls players. And I think that you're either an Argonian player or you're a Khajiit player. Or you don't play either. But Argonians are S tier. Everything where their lore is tied to the two moons and their homeland and elsewhere, and there's all kinds of different types of Khajiit they can be, where they can be more of like a straight up lion or like a little house cat, or they can be the humanoid Khajiit that you'd expect. In the Elder Scrolls Online, I think all of their Crescent Moon stuff is really cool on their armor and their weapons. And then obviously in Skyrim, it's funny how they have traveling caravans and deal skooma and stuff. And it's always a funny. I think it's a funny meme where it's people in Skyrim are kind of hate the Khajiit because they say they're all thieves and they're all skooma dealers, and it's kind of funny because they actually are all thieves and skooma dealers. If you like, there's a list that you look up this list and it's got all the Khajiits in the game and what they do, and they're all thieves or skooma dealers of some way. So I think it's really funny the way that they do that, but I think they're the coolest race, and this is kind of why these lion folk. Go back and see what they're called again. Also, if I can't remember what you're called, the Frothgar, it's not a good sign. Yeah, so they got kicked way down for that, mainly because the Khajiit's so good. And next, we have. Is this the Sahagin? I think it is. Let me pull up a picture and just make sure that I'm going to be telling you about the right one here. Nope, this isn't the Sahagin. What the hell am I looking at? Is it the Zora? Nope. You can tell I didn't play this game. Geez, we're going to have to come back to this one. I'm not even sure what this is. It's not the... Okay, it is the Naga. Okay, so this is like a sea... I don't know if it's a snake. I think it's like a snake. Amphibian fish snake. They're like sea raiders. They're pretty low. They're not that low though. They're right there. They're kind of lame. Those are kind of lame. There's a cooler one coming up further away, but I think that. Oh no, I'm not. I was looking at the Sahagin again. What the hell are these ones? I already forgot what they're called. Oh, bear with me. The Naga. Half human, half serpent beings often tied to ancient curses. In Warcraft, transformed highborn elves serving Queen Ashara. Using alignments, known for their aquatic abilities and mystical powers, often enemies in game, rarely playable. Okay, actually, maybe they are cooler. Maybe these guys are lame. They're cooler than the Bosmer, I think. Seems like they have a little bit more lore than I'm aware of. Okay, next is... This one is actually a hot take because with these ones that I've never heard of until doing a little bit of research here, generally, obviously, I'm pretty biased, but this Loxodon is an elephant humanoid. And I think it's one of those things where when you make a beast race, people typically gravitate towards things. Maybe this isn't true, but things that could be generally the size or would make sense around the size of a human. And I think when you make a beast race and it's a huge animal, and then B, it's a big person of that race, I think it's really cool. Also, they have really cool lore with like their clerics generally or druids, and they do kind of draw on like they like what elephants are known to be, but I think it's super cool and unique. I think that's A tier. I think that's really awesome. I think that's actually sick. I think if you're developing a fantasy world, doing something out of the box like an elephant, instead of doing the cat folk, which I'm no better than in our fantasy world we have a cat folk, doing the wolf folk again, doing lizard people, bird people, the things that are like, would you just think off the top of your head, like, oh yeah, let's have, I don't know, like a cat person, a dog person, and a bird person, right? And maybe a snake person. Those come right off the top of your head, and they don't require that much thought. And then you can write cool lore to make them cool. But like the Loxodon is cool before any lore. I think he's just cool off rip, and I think that's really cool. Next is the Navi. So even though what I said about them being sea elves, basically, these are pretty cracked actually. I think that they're I don't know. I mean, they're like kind of S tier, aren't they? And I hate to be like an Avatar stan, but like they're really S tier for sure. You just get so much. I think that because they're the like main fantasy race in the Avatar movies, they get so much more love and attention than any fantasy race in almost any other medium. Um, so it gives them basically they're like a layup S tier is kind of what I'm saying. But and I think like to be fair, The Hobbit, right? They're so important. Um, oh man, I just realized something. How about this? I don't have dwarfs on here. We got to amend this. We have to amend this. This can't be. I can't believe I almost just gave you guys a fantasy tier list without dwarves. What was I saying? Basically, the hobbits are so cool because Lord of the Rings is really centered around the hobbits. It feels like, at least the movies, that is. So I think with the Navi, they kind of get the layup where they just have so much emphasis put on them throughout the movies that it's kind of hard to not like them. I think they're pretty awesome. We're about to add the dwarves here. I'm sorry. I must just threw the whole list. And we'll do them at the end. I must threw the whole list by doing that. That was insane. I would have lost it. I'm not putting the elves from the Lord of the... I'll put the elves from the Lord of the Rings in here because I was going to say I covered a bunch of elves already. And, I didn't want to like make a whole fantasy tier list and have it just be this elf from this show, this elf from that show, this elf from this show, this elf from that show. But I think that Tolkien's elves um, uh, are probably better than Elder Scrolls is, even though I'm biased towards the Elder Scrolls. I will throw the elves in there. Okay, cool. Next is the Nords. So as far as human races go, they're going to be top of B tier. Skyrim's my favorite game of all time, and they're really just Vikings. So there's really nothing even special about them, but I just love them. I think that they're just so cool. Skyrim itself is such an awesome region, and you get so much of their culture through exploring it. And you have the dragon priests and the dragons and the Draugr and all of the ruins that all just tie into the race itself. So that's probably biased, but I'm gonna put it up there. Next is the orcs, specifically orcs from the Elder Scrolls, and I make the distinction because I'm actually I have the orcs and the Uruk-hai separate from the Lord of the Rings. And the orcs I think are really cool, and I think that the orcs in the Elder Scrolls I think are really cool because they're not just mindless barbarian. Like the librarian in the College of Winterhold is an orc. And then they're great smiths, and it's what they're known for. I do think it's maybe a little bit upsetting that when you play Skyrim, they express how great of smiths all of the orcs are, and then you look at any of the orcish weapons, and then they look like shanty. It looks like somebody who has no idea what they're doing made them. So I think that is kind of upsetting, but they draw a lot of inspiration from Mongol culture. I just like that they're not your typical orc, but they did come out after Lord of the Rings, so I think that they have to not be your typical orc. Next one is the Red Guard from Skyrim. And I think a lot of people might disagree because I think a lot of people don't actually play Red Guards in Skyrim, which I guess in a weird way. I mean, I'm not gonna. Yeah, let me not say what I'm thinking, but you know what, I will, because I'm not gonna leave us on here. So I think in a weird way, a lot of fantasy fans, and this is I'm not saying all by any means, but a lot of fantasy fans are just white guys, and something about to a lot of people is being a white guy and playing somebody of a different race is just a little different, you know? It's like if I wanted to be a human character, I would just be someone who looks like me, right? So that's why like I'll play a Khajiit or Dark Elf, and they don't need to look like me. But if I play a human character, why wouldn't he just look like me? I think is the point. So I think that's why the Red Guards suffer. And with that being said, I think that they're actually like lore-wise the coolest humans, and it's not close. It's not close at all, actually. Their lore is so awesome. I mean, and they even have like flavor in Skyrim, because you have all of the oh, was it the Alakir? You have the Alakir warriors, um, and they're like sword singers, and they're the only race that held out against the Empire, or held out against, and they're currently holding out against the Thalmor. Um, they're seafarers. Um, they have like a really cool. Their culture is just so blended too in a way where it's like a lot of times in Elder Scrolls you can say, okay, well this relates to that. The Imperials are Romans, the Nords are Vikings, the Bretons are like Britannic or Englishmen. Um, the Wood Elves are kind of like Native Americans. The Orcs are kind of like Mongols, or at least that's what they get their inspiration from. The Argonians have a lot of Mesoamerican inspiration, but the Red Guards are just really unique, where they kind of have that desert people vibe, which is kind of a trope, but um, they have Persian influence and Arabian influence and Northern African Berber influence and or I'm losing the name of them. It's where the Umayyads, what they are. I can't remember what that culture is, but um, they're just so unique. Even a little bit of Ottoman here and there, but so they kind of blend all those cultures together, and you get one really unique culture out of it. Um, they're the coolest human race. Shit, damn! If they're not the coolest race, period. I mean, if you're the coolest human race, period, are you S tier? That's a good question. Because I think they're the coolest human race, maybe of almost any fantasy title that I can think of. I'm gonna give them top of A tier, but they're awesome. And like I said, I think a lot of people don't play them, and it kind of it sucks, but I just think that that's how most people play games. If I'm gonna play a human character, I just want to play somebody who looks like me. But that's just me personally. Maybe not everybody's like that, and maybe I'm just totally wrong. But um, their lore is so awesome. They're definitely the best lore. And the next is the Uruk-hai, or the Orcs, in J.R.R. Tolkien, Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit. And even though they are, like I was saying, I like the Skyrim Orcs because they're different. But that wasn't me saying that the Skyrim Orcs are better, or Elder Scrolls Orcs, I should say, that they're better. That was me justifying not putting them in D tier because they do Orcs right, in the sense where Tolkien made them the barbarians, and you need that. And anyone who does Orcs that are barbarians, they're copying Tolkien's. And there's not really a lot that you even need to say about them. They're awesome. They're really cool. Even the Shadow of War games really expand on the Orcs. Um, so I think that they're actually, because they're so defining. Wait, they're below the Hobbits. To be fair, they're right there though. I think the Orcs are awesome. All right, next to these Aquaman, I gotta go see what the heck they're called again. The Sahagan, fish-like humanoids that raid coastal sediments during the Final Fantasy games. I think I'm a Final Fantasy hater. I might just throw them down a D tier. Fish folk that raid the settlements. That's actually, I'm just joking. I think that's better than that. Okay, cool. Yeah, I like it. Next are the Skaven. They're rat people, and I've played Warhammer, so I do actually know. I know actually know more about the Skaven than I thought I did. Are they actually really cool? For a weird reason that they're really cool. They're right there. They're really cool. Next are any skeleton race. If you have any skeleton race, you get insta D tier for that. So just throwing it out there to anybody who has a skeleton race that it's insta D tier. This is a bird person, and he is, I believe, a Tengu. So he's an avian humanoid, basically based loosely on Japanese myth. Often reclusive or isolationist in lore. Pretty weak bird person, but probably better than those guys, huh? Tieflings. Now, if you've played Baldur's Gate, which is what I know Tieflings from, they're pretty cool. They're up there. I don't really, if you haven't played, well, D&D, I suppose they're in D&D and they're, like, I guess they're like, not really from hell, but they're infernally touched. And I don't have a lot of experience playing D&D, mainly just from Baldur's Gate. And they're really cool. There's a few variations of them. I think they're pretty cool. I think they're pretty cool. I'm not going to pretend like I'm the Tiefling lore book, but they're pretty cool. Next is we have the Fastaya. And even though I'm a huge League of Legends fan, as you can see, it's actually right here on the bottom of my window. They're D tier because you can't just tell me that you have beastfolk or the Vastaya. It's almost like this isn't really even a race. This is like a class. Like this is like saying a canine, and then you're like wolves, dogs, any other things that might be canine. It's actually broader than that. I think it's not bad because the way they do it, it might be more specific to each type of Vastaya. But one sec. What, buddy? Next up we have this thing from Zelda, which is the Zora, and it's a fish-like people. And they're pretty cool. They have a really cool design. I don't know the most about their lore, but I kind of like the way that they look. I did do a little bit of a dive, not a dive. I put my toe in the water on their lore, and they're probably one of the cooler. They're the coolest of the fish people. I'll give them that. What the hell is this thing? Sylvari? This is a Sylvari? Plant folk? Goodly. They're kind of weak. I don't know if maybe I'm a Guild Wars hater, but Guild Wars races aren't very cool, are they? Well, we're going to jump past them and go to the Yordles. Now, the opposite. Yordles are cool. Yeah, they have broken lore, though. Okay, I'm going to throw them here because they have really broken lore, and they just retconned all of the little people into being Yordles. And they're all from Bandle City. But when you see all the Yordles, they don't really look like that they all are from someplace. So it's kind of like, it's kind of strange. I don't know. They are cool, though. I mean, I think bottom of B tier is good for them. Next is the Yuan-ti, which is a snake folk in D&D. They're typical snake folk, but I think that there is something respectable, which I didn't really appreciate here at all, but about having a beast humanoid that doesn't have legs. It's a bold choice, and I kind of respect the bold choice. And next, to wrap it up, you saw we added the dwarves and the elves from Tolkien. Now, here's what we're going to do. Can I not absolutely ruin everything forever? Okay, they're S tier. The dwarves are S tier. The elves are better than the orcs, and then the elves are better than the hobbits too, and they're better than the red guards, but they're not S tier. Ooh, are the Na'vi better than Khajiits? This is a hilarious question. This is a hilarious question. Oh my god, are Na'vi better than Khajiits? Na'vi are better than Khajiits. Or not. They are. Okay, they're better than Khajiits. Alright, this is our finished tier list, and I feel pretty good about it. Hate me in the comments. These are hot takes. Probably, maybe they're not hot takes. I don't know. If you're Guild Wars player, let me know how much you hate me in the comments. Okay. If you're a Guild Wars player, let me know how much you hate me in the comments. If you're a bird person lover and you think that bird persons are S tier, you're wrong. If you think Skaven's S tier, it's a hot take, and I don't hate it. If you think if Bretons are your favorite Elder Scrolls race, reevaluate. Reevaluate. Seriously, reevaluate. If you love the Dark Elves, you're right. Have fun. Just appreciate the fact that you're right. But with all that being said, look out for more updates with Winter Reach Emporium. We're gonna make some devlogs here soon. Also, we're gonna have probably when this has been released, the release trailer for Winter Reach Emporium is probably already out. Check it out. Wishlist it. Make sure you like, comment if you appreciate the list or hate the list. Subscribe. Also, our Patreon and Steam store links will be in the description. And then this is I made it a single-use tier list. I would share this, but it's a single-use tier list. So if you want to make one, maybe even at me and show me your tier list, because I do like to make tier lists. So it's kind of fun, and I get to sit here and ramble. I think it's hard to make a video by yourself sometimes, but when it's a tier list, I just get to sit here, and I would do this by myself and not recording, so it works out. But all right, thanks so much for watching.